Hi guys, today we're looking at a Kodak 35. This is sometimes called the worst 35mm rangefinder camera Kodak ever made. There were people who said it was so ugly only a mother could love it. I got this at an antique store for $19.45. When they were new, they sold for $48. 60% more than an Argus C3 at the time. The value on eBay for one of these is anywhere from $10 to $300. Most of them are sold as is and not tested, and there's a good reason for that. They had a lot of failures by the time they're this old. I just got it because it was a cute little camera, unique shape, and I thought it was very appealing. These were made from 1940 to 1951. It was Kodak's first 35mm rangefinder that was made in the United States. The shutter speeds on this go from 1/10 to 1/200th, plus it has a bulb and a timer setting. Aperture is 3.5 to f/16, and there's a tiny little rangefinder and viewfinder windows. One of the problems that happens with all of these older cameras, especially the Kodaks that were this particular vintage, was the grease that's in the lens for focusing hardens up over the years and it turns into cement. And this one will focus down to just under 4 feet, but as you get close to infinity, or try to get close to infinity, it binds up and you can't get beyond that point. I tried everything to loosen it up and I gave up. The serial number is actually on the lens, and since the lens is not removable, this particular serial number is E06799, and Kodak has a code name for transforming the serial numbers into the years they were made, and they use the word camerosity. I'll put a picture on the screen of that. And so you use the letters to determine the year, and since it starts with E and O, that means that this camera was made in 1946. And the rest of the serial number, the 6799, is the 6,799 camera like this that was made in 1946. On the top, we have the rewind knob and a film counter and a film release button, which must be depressed between every advancement of the film. You can't cock the shutter and advance the film unless you press that button and then advance it. And this is, of course, the winding knob. The winding knob also pulls up so that you can rewind the film, otherwise it's locked up, and then you push it back down again. It's kind of tricky, and this one's pretty old and hard to move. On the front, we have the lens, and that's the rangefinder window and the viewfinder window. This is the other end of the rangefinder window. This pin is the shutter release pin. You press it down with your finger like that. You use this extra gear to focus the lens. This is the shutter speed dial, and you can see the indicators at the top, and the shutter on this one actually works fine. I'll set it for 1/100th of a second. And here's the f-stop little slider at the bottom, and that one actually works fine too. So this little lever on the side, which you could pull down, is the self-timer. I won't attempt to use that, but you would pull it down, release the shutter, and it would go back up. And there is no sync port or flash connector at all on this camera. It's not set up to take flash photography. On the right and left sides, there's only the plastic knobs to put a camera strap on, strap lugs. And on the bottom, there's the little lock to get the film back off. On the back of the camera, that's the rangefinder window, that tiny little speck, and that's the viewfinder window. And they seem to work okay, except they're awfully small. And like I said, you can't get to infinity on this camera because it's defective. So if we take the back off, and the back actually comes off quite easily. Now, since this camera was obviously bad and I had no use for it, I thought I'd get artsy, and I used cheap gold paint to paint it, and then I used paper shelf liner to add the wood-like covering to it. And you know, it's pretty ugly, but from 10 feet away, it looks really nice. So to get this back off, you gently pop it off like that. Against my better judgment, I'll try and load some film in this. There we go. Now that cocks the shutter. Now to advance it again, of course it would be better to have the back on, I have to take an exposure, then press the release button, then advance it again. And there's a lot of stress on here because this thing is old and dirty, but you get the idea. The back goes on a lot easier than most cameras, and we're all set. So we cock the shutter. It's at 1/100th of a second, and the shutter clicked. Nice quiet shutter. Again, you can't advance it again unless you release that. And about this time, since I've wound it up and put new film in, you'd set the film counter to 0 or 1. Take a picture, release it, cock the shutter, and keep going. Take a picture, release it, cock the shutter, and keep going. And the counter is slowly advancing. I put the 1 on the wrong side, so it's, you get the idea. So you can't really take double exposures because you can only cock the shutter by advancing the film. Now to rewind it, you need to pull this out like that, and then you can rewind it with this knob. And I'll take the back off because I don't want to rewind the film all the way. It would be, it proudly says made in the USA on the top. I don't know how proud they should be of that, since the consensus is, again on the internet, that this is the worst 35mm rangefinder they ever made. Clearly the rangefinder window and the viewfinder window are so small that it's a pain to work with. But you know what? It is what it is. It's a cute little thing. I tried to make it look nice. That's it, guys. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video.